Hi, my name is Gabrielle, and today Kyle and I want to share some tips with you about audio narration. In this short video, we'll demonstrate how working with narrators can present some unique challenges in sound design. Today, we'll be recording using a method called straight record, where the narrator can read uninterrupted, and it's up to the editor to take out any mistakes in the recording. Let's go ahead and introduce you to our narrators. This is Jeremy, seen here reviewing his script, and a slightly nervous Melina.
Chapter 5. The sound of Kira's screams brought Gaius to his feet. In the clearing below, everyone was running in the direction of the river. He turned and put his hand across his brow to shade the glare from the water, just in time to see the little one topple off into the river.
The first few seconds of the clip were recorded outside the booth with studio ambiance. Then a switch to ADR, using the actual WAV file that was recorded from inside the booth. As you could hear, a sound booth is an ideal place for a narrator to record.
The two of them tossed and tumbled about in the swift, muddy current as it churned downstream toward what remained of the small island of rocks, sand, and shrubbery. I'm just going to go back. The two of them tossed and tumbled about in the swift, muddy current as it churned downstream toward what remained of a small island of rock.
In this clip, you may have noticed Jeremy self-correcting himself after a mistake, and then clearing his throat. More experienced narrators have learned that constant throat clearing can be damaging to the vocal cords if it becomes habit. This is a good reason to encourage your narrator to develop a good technique for straight recording.
Lucilla charged up the hill toward the pavilion where he stood. Ignoring him completely, she barked orders for the awning to be struck, so that the ropes could be used in a rescue. Juliana, who had been standing beside him, sprang into action, sweeping the dishes from the table. Juliana, who had been standing beside him, sprang into action, sweeping the dishes from the table with one hand. She climbed up onto it to Juliana, who had been standing beside him, sprang into action. Sweeping the dishes from the table with one hand, she climbed up onto it to better reach the knots.
Quickly consider if you could edit those 3 attempts into one usable passage, and don't stop your narrator unless absolutely necessary.
While we're on the subject of mistakes, as you can tell, straight record has a distinct advantage over punch record, a method where the narrator stops after each mistake and immediately re-records the passage, overriding the error.
Just beyond the refuge, the river widened. I'm going to take that sentence again. Just beyond their refuge, the river widened. Swirling, hungry pools could be seen as it broke over the first series of cascading falls, dangerously flooded by the snowmelt from the heights. A short distance beyond this, the river narrowed again.
Notice how he caught his own mispronunciation of the word widened and went back. You should be ready to note any mistakes that you hear, but the narrator doesn't catch. Mark them in the script to be recorded at the end of the session. Pay careful attention to fricatives and other sounds that can be improperly enunciated. In the next clip, we'll switch back to the studio sound. Listen.
He realized what she intended to do as soon as she saw her stop. Sorry.
Notice the door slamming just outside the studio.
He realized what she intended to do as soon as she saw her stop. I'm going to take that sentence again, sorry. Before he could shout out his objection.
Thanks to the booth soundproofing, the door slam didn't come through on the WAV file, but then we had a sound from within the booth, page turning. Most narrators prefer to use hard copy scripts over digital copies because they have made their own notes about how to read the script. This is fine, but coach them to be silent for a few seconds, both before and after each page turn. This way, the editor can tell by the gaps and transients on the WAV file, where there are page turns or other mistakes that must be taken out. Pay attention and don't let outside noises ruin a well-read passage.
Plunged down the steep terrain. Just then, he became aware that another figure had followed Maya into the water.
There are narrators who record themselves and become quite skilled at the punch record technique. For some narrators, however, straight record works better because it allows them to correct themselves quickly and get back into the flow of the narration.
Just as she was forced to slow down her own pace in order to climb down the rocky precipice toward the beach. "Maya swims?" Gaius asked as he joined her in the climb. "Yes, but this is no day for even a good swimmer to be in the river." She replied as she pulled up her skirts around her thighs and jumped down the last few steps. The two figures in the water had met midstream. Gaius could see that Stefan had taken the position on the downstream side of Maya to... Gaius could see that Stefan had... blah, blah, blah. Gaius could see that Stefan had taken the position on the downstream side of Maya to better keep her from being swept away from him. Together, they were swimming hard, making steady progress toward the small island.
And here is Jeremy coming out of the booth. Be certain your narrators are allowed time for breaks and plenty of fluids. Let's take a minute to hear Jeremy's self-assessment of his efforts today.
I mean, I was nervous. I feel like somewhere like on second or third page, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm finding my stride. I think that the nerves, I didn't want to rush. I knew that I started to rush, but also the script kind of wanted some fever behind it.
Now you can listen to a recording edited with sound effects added.
Leaving the half-dressed guard to collapse with relief, Gaius turned to follow Juljana and the others. His fear was so palpable that it threatened to suffocate him. He caught sight of some of his own men in the water, only to see them tumbling about in the swift current like pieces of driftwood, before they too disappeared into the flume. He could no longer see the length of the river once it merged into the ravine. He scanned the water. There was no sign of Maya. Members of the household stood stretched out along the riverbank, gazing out over the water. Juljana stood in front of the rest, peering out over the wider pool, and was soon joined by others.